Hi, everyone. My name is Kelsey Zonalo, and I am the Development Associate here at SPN. Thank you for joining us today for the Volunteer Management Workshop panel. I am now going to hand it over to Melissa Lagowski. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kelsey. Really excited to be here today and to be able to talk about volunteer management to grow your programs. A little bit about me and my background is that I actually am a past executive director of a nonprofit organization. I manage 24 events a year and including our largest event, which had 600 volunteers, also managed several newsletters, 8 committees, 225 members, but I was a staff of 1. So I managed to hold on to my passion for the nonprofit community and started Big Buzz Idea Group. And we exist to power nonprofit organizations to fuel positive change in the world and bring our experience out to people like you doing good work in your communities, with your sports teams, in your leagues, and just help everybody be a little bit stronger and a whole lot better. Through Big Buzz Idea Group, because of the way that we work, we know that many nonprofit executives lack the time, staff, skills, and funding they need. So we really try to fill in gaps in management, marketing, and events so that the nonprofits can focus on their big picture and position their organization to thrive. In doing that, we currently, pre-COVID, we managed up to 1,000 volunteers a year and really have a lot of experience with small scale volunteer programs all the way up to that large scale 600 person plus volunteer program. And I think that we've got some experiences we can bring to you. I generally like to say that I feel like I did everything the way you should not do them. And so even if I can just share a couple of my missteps along the way and they make somebody else a little smarter or a little bit better in the long run, I'm happy to share those missteps with you. Today, we're going to do kind of an overview of a few different pieces, and I've divided it into segments: preparing for success, recruiting volunteers, managing volunteers, and then postseason details and things you can do to continue to help your volunteer program thrive. In preparing for success, I again have outlined the sections that we're going to talk about. I think that these are the steps to prepare for success. And I always believe goal setting is at the top of every successful plan in any organization. So we'll talk about goal setting, analyzing and outlining your needs, creating job descriptions for the positions that you are looking to fill, preparing for the volunteer sign up, having a communication plan to maintain that contact with your volunteers, and then onboarding and training your volunteers is also a huge part of success in this initiative. When it comes to goal setting, I really think that you've got to just start by thinking intentionally about what it is that is your ideal dream of a team to support you throughout the season that you are embarking upon. So if the sky was the limit, what would you like to accomplish with your volunteer campaign? Really dream and through it and think about all of the pieces and of the puzzle where a volunteer might be helpful. What would a successful volunteer campaign look like for your community? Who would participate? Why would it matter? And what would it mean to your sports team or your sports league if you were to have success in this initiative? A big part of the planning is all about setting the intention of what you want to accomplish. And I think that these days, as people have gotten far more time starved, I do think that really breaking down a lot of initiatives into even bite-sized chunks where people can plug in and support you is important. And I think this why it would matter is incredibly important, because I think we sometimes are so close to the work that we do that we forget to tell others why it's important. And so by really sharing why the participation of the volunteer, what it will mean for your organization, how they can make a difference in your organization, I think can really start to help some people want to get involved at a deeper level. And I love this quote: if you aim at nothing, you will hit it every time. So the more that you can outline kind of what you're trying to accomplish and share that, the better you're going to, the better you're going to be able to recruit people to participate. I also think that it's important that we realize as we are embarking on this volunteer recruitment journey, that you change all of the language, right? It's really important that we always take that team approach for the we and the us instead of the I or the me, and really just make them feel like they're part of the team. And I think the other thing I've seen an awful lot of organizations do is that they don't give volunteers meaningful opportunities to support your initiative. And people want to make a difference. They want to know that they're doing something that matters and that they're having a meaningful impact. And so really trying to identify what those contributions might look like, how you can tie into a volunteer's knowledge and skill set, but still make it meaningful, maybe even small, but meaningful, is really going to help you advance your program, I think, in the long run. I think it's important for you to define what success looks like for your program. Most of us have a vision on the front end: the number of teams, the number of volunteers, the dollars needed for your program, the outcomes you want to achieve by the end of the season, etc. And it becomes important when you're working with volunteers to share that vision. Often, again, we're so close to it, or we're part of a committee, or we're part of a board, but everybody needs to be connected. And by really knowing what success looks like from the board level to the committee level to the volunteer level helps everybody to be able to be collaborative and engaged and be part of a successful team. Most of you know what it means to be part of a successful team, and you're simply trying to offer that same experience to your volunteers. As you define what success looks like, I think again that sometimes you have to make sure you're looking at it from a perspective other than yours. As maybe a coach or a board member, you may automatically think that everybody knows your perspective, but we have to put ourselves in other people's shoes. We have to look at it from the volunteer perspective, from the individual team, from the league perspectives. They all have different vantage points. And so making sure that we are thinking beyond ourselves and thinking in those other perspectives helps everybody to start to get on the same page and make sure. We've all heard the one team, one dream. And I think that that applies here as well. But to really understand one another, we have to look at things from others' perspectives. And sometimes that means asking questions. You may not always have all of the knowledge and information of what it does look like from another perspective, but if you go in with this intention, you can ask, the coaches, what is our collective goals? How do we want to, recruit? What message do we want to send? You can ask your league or your board, what are we trying to accomplish as a group? And even from your volunteers, like, why does volunteering matter to you? What do you want to be able to contribute? And let people have a chance to lift up their voice. When you give everybody that chance to connect at this level, you start to set yourself up for greater success. And again, looking at how everybody plays into this success, equally important. Everyone's got a role. So, what role will the league leadership play? And understanding clearly, I think we're going to talk a little bit more about kind of setting expectations and job descriptions at each level. And I think it starts from the leadership. So hopefully your league will have some descriptions about kind of what the board's responsibilities are, what the coach's responsibilities are, and on down to all of the different levels, because everybody's got to be playing from the same playbook if you want to achieve this success. You've got to know what role the team leadership will play. What is their role and responsibility in the achieving success for your season, for your community, etc. What role will the volunteers play? Oftentimes, I think volunteers are the glue that holds it all together. And we have to give them the knowledge to understand what their role is and why it matters, and show them how they plug in to make success possible, to make the league possible, to make this sports program available in their community and bring more opportunities to the children and the youth that they serve. So those things all start to really matter, and you have to intentionally think through this and brainstorm this with leadership so that you're all saying the same thing and providing the same information out to your volunteers and the different levels within your organization. And thinking about why this initiative matters to the community. I think these days there's an awful lot of reasons why people want to bring sports and activities into different communities. I think it offers a lot of opportunity for people to, develop leadership skills, to be able to have a positive impact, to be able to keep people, interested in constructive programs, and really kind of keep them on a good path for future leaders down the road. And so staying focused on the mission of your organization should always also be at the core. And so whatever the mission is of your particular program, making sure that everybody at every level knows that, and that you look at how and explain how you're accomplishing that becomes really important as well. Everyone wants to feel that they matter, and they want to believe that their contribution matters too. It's your job to help them feel important and impactful by tying them back to your mission and showing them the results that your organization is providing. So I think when you want to start on your volunteer planning, it becomes important to analyze and outline your volunteer needs. Again, I think there are needs at all of these different levels. I've tried to really brainstorm a nice laundry list of opportunities, but these can be different for every organization or program. So these are also just meant to be a starting off point and like a launch board for you to continue to think about additional opportunities where you might need help. So obviously your board. People have to sit at that board and make the hard decisions for the entire league or program. And so having a strong board matters. I know there were a couple other programs during this conference that will address board directives and why selecting the right leadership for your board matters on multiple levels. Also, you're going to need coaches, and sometimes that might be coaching specialties as well. Your hitting coaches or your kicking coaches and things of that nature. So really making sure that you're thinking through all of the different levels of coaches and the specialties that you will be needing. Administration. There's often a lot of details that have to take place behind the scenes to make a proper, to make a sports league run efficiently. So thinking about that on the front end and finding people who have that skill set can be really important to helping you run a seamless program. Communications. You will hear me say it a couple of times today that I really do believe communications is the key to success. Communications, we all think we're doing it, but it takes a high level of making sure you're heard, making sure the information is received in the way you intended it to be received. So you want to make sure that you are finding people who specialize in communications and have people devoted to communications so that you can achieve maximum success. Scheduling may be part of the administration process, or it may be entirely different, but you've got to match up the season play and be able to match who's going to go head to head on a regular basis. So making sure that that is part of your planning is important. Umpires and referees, these may be provided for you, or this might be something that you are responsible for hiring or implementing, and making sure that you have volunteers to manage that piece might be helpful as well. Personally, after watching my children participate in a couple of sports leagues, I think that a dugout manager is also a position you might want to consider. I know that managing the children in the dugout has oftentimes been just a full-time task to keep them focused on the game when they're learning the processes at the younger ages. So I thought that that was kind of something that I wanted to add to the list. Managing the scorekeeping, another valuable component. Maybe you need a volunteer to oversee your equipment to make sure that you have what you need and that it's making it from game to game during the season. Ongoing maintenance, perhaps it's maintenance of your fields, maintenance of your equipment, maintenance of your supplies, whatever it might be, that also could be a volunteer position. And then also concession stands sometimes need to be able to be managed as well. You might need somebody relative to the healthcare program. What system do you have in place for if somebody gets injured on the field, and what training needs to happen? And do you need healthcare volunteers to help ensure the safety of the people participating in your program? Team snacks might be another volunteer position, and I'm sure there's still others that perhaps I haven't listed here that might be relevant and useful for your particular program. So I encourage you to really brainstorm your ideal list of those who might be able to help you on the front end, so that as you prepare to go out and find volunteers, that you can list all of the available opportunities in your recruiting. Once you have the list of the volunteer opportunities, I think that oftentimes we try to shortcut this, or maybe just, we're all, again, limited on our own time. But I do think that creating job descriptions and starting to treat this the same as a company would any position that they were trying to fill actually starts to set your program up for some great success, because it shows that you're taking it seriously. And when you can outline the roles and responsibilities of each one of these volunteer positions, people also start to know what they're agreeing to. For a lot of our clients, we post right on the recruitment form, the application they use to submit for consideration, what the requirement and the expectation is at each different volunteer level, so that people know what they're agreeing to. I think oftentimes I've received them myself where I get invitations to volunteer, but I have no idea. Are you asking for 1 hour? Are you asking for 10 weeks? Are you asking for a one-time commitment? What does it really look like? What will I be responsible for? And the more that we can be clear about sharing this information on the front end, the more that I think you might be able to get people to commit. If people know that it might be a short term, or if people know that it's a small contribution that will allow their child to participate in a successful program, I think you'll get more participation and more response. And so it's really important to outline the roles and responsibilities, and to just be able to explain and share that. And again, it also ensures that your expectation and the volunteers' expectations start to be more aligned, which sets you up for that success that we know you want to accomplish. Again, listing out the amount of time required for this role can be helpful. It can be an estimate. It doesn't have to be exact, but listing the days and times involved can also be helpful. If your practices are going to be on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but your coach, somebody interested in coaching is not available on Tuesdays and Thursdays, that just helps to, again, maybe they can put a request in for their schedule to get changed, or maybe that volunteer is not going to be able to contribute as a coach. Maybe they need to help with practices on Saturday morning instead. So really, just again, outlining the expectations and sharing as much information as possible helps set you up for success. Also include any training. I know that some youth programs have special training that is required for them to be able to work with youth in their communities. Sometimes it's a matter of, some parents may think, I don't know enough to be a coach, but do you have coaches training where you help set them up for success? I can tell another example where I signed up to be an assistant coach for my young daughter's softball team. And due to lack of interest, I quickly became the coach. And I was worried that I did not have all of the proper skills and the knowledge needed. Had there been a support training program, I might have been more willing to do that and stay involved for more years. As it was, I did not continue my commitment with that organization, because I wanted to make sure that all of the youth were receiving the proper instruction. And I really didn't know if I was giving that as somebody who had no training resources. So making sure that you're offering training for those who have an interest, but maybe don't have the knowledge or aren't comfortable in the level of knowledge that they know, so that again, they have the support to achieve success in their volunteering is very important. And then again, are there other requirements that perhaps I'm not listing here, but they should be included for your particular program? So I think you want to make sure that that is included as well. I also didn't mention at the beginning, but I do think that as we go through this, if you have any questions, I hope you will put those into the chat. We will be addressing them at the end of our presentation and trying to answer any questions that you might have as we go through this information today. Once you've got all of your positions outlined and you've set up your expectations, then you can move into preparing for sign up. You want to make sure that your sign up process is very easy. Lots of people are using electronic signups these days, which can be, simple and effective. Some people are still utilizing forms. Some people are utilizing a combination of both. Do you, clip the application and send it in? What does that look like? Sometimes you may go out to different places as part of your volunteer recruitment, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And when you do that, you might need a hard copy form that people can fill out on the spot, as well as an online process, just so that you don't lose anybody who might be interested by sending them to a link or having to follow up with them later. So really making sure that you're evaluating your processes and that they're smooth and fluid is really important as well. Again, making sure you know who's on your team is going to supervise this process and how the information is going to be managed once it's received. I love to tell the example of, we had a program one time that we were recruiting volunteers over kind of a 3-month period. Wanted to get a jump start, wanted to get on people's calendars, and we had kind of a slow trickle in on information. And, unfortunately, by the time we then followed up with some of the original applicants, they had already made other plans because they hadn't heard back from us on a confirmation or what next steps would be. So I really think that making sure you know who's going to manage this and that you have some kind of direct acknowledgement as soon as you do have a sign up come in, have an auto, it can even be an auto reply of thank you for your sign up. Training dates will be held on this date and this time at this location. We will be hoping that you can participate in one of those 3 training dates and times, and we will be following up with you, sharing additional information at XYZ date and time. Also can be very important to let the volunteer just know when to expect to have a follow-up or what that's going to look like. And when you know who's managing this process, then you're able to know who's going to be doing that follow-up and making sure that that outreach happens, because it's really incredible in success. Confirm the data that you need to collect. Do you need the cell phone for one parent, both parents? These days, sometimes, you need information for both parents. A lot of people may have divorced parents or may have separations in their families. And so making sure you can reach the parents and communicate effectively becomes incredibly important. Also, asking your volunteers what their preferred method of communication is helps increase your chance of success here as well. And it can be really hard on your part to have to manage multiple means of communication. But when you meet people on their desired communication channel, you start to again have greater impact. Some people prefer text, some people prefer email, some people are okay with, even being able to be in an app or having a different channel of communication. If you're going to use an app, making sure your volunteers are, thoroughly trained on how to do that successfully can also set you up for success. And then they can help other parents also get comfortable with your app. But it's important to help people use the technology that you're using so that they feel comfortable and that they can get what they need to be able to respond and participate effectively. And then what else might you need to know from your volunteers to evaluate if they're the best candidate for some of your volunteer positions? I think we will talk a little bit more about the selection process and evaluation processes.
Get a little bit more granular about it. Like, how do you build that support, or like, how do you demonstrate your ability to be supportive to adults?
I feel by observation, observing, going to the classrooms and to the schools to see what the teachers are doing, and just piggyback on what they're doing, just give out some small points or positive reinforcements to help them further along?
I will talk a little bit more about any questions that go into the chat. So if there is a particular question, please put that in the chat. I want to continue on the main program to get through all of the slides, and some of the questions might be addressed in the further slides down the road. So I'm going to work through the slides and then answer questions in the chat. So please put your questions there. So once you know all of the data you need to collect and the information you need to be able to evaluate those volunteers, then again, establishing a communication plan is going to be really important. Making sure that you have that frequency of communication, letting them know how frequently they will hear from you. Obviously, sometimes you have to add clarifications. Sometimes there will be monthly meetings where maybe certain groups or subgroups within your program will come together. But you want to be able to establish the communication plan on the front end so you can let your volunteers know what to expect as you go forward. And then part of the success as you prepare for the sign up and the management of the season, again, also confirming a plan for your onboarding and training becomes very important. That training, you know, you start to be able to outline what it's going to look like, when allowing people to ask questions of you and answering that. And every time you offer an onboarding or a training, I feel like you also start to open up the opportunity for people to tell you more about what they need or what questions they have. And as you hear questions, you can keep revising and evolving your training process or your training document to start to include those. And so your program will continue to automatically get stronger, better, and address more of that information as people ask questions, because they really do help you elevate your program just through their curiosity and identifying things that maybe were not covered in the first versions of your program. And I think that these onboarding and training programs, they're ever evolving. You know, it's never like you create it and you're finished with it. It really is always about learning and growing. And as you know better, you can do better and level up all of that training process. Once you have all of the details in the planning process outlined on the back end, then you start to become ready to recruit volunteers. And I think sometimes this is something that might be challenging for people. But I think that as you think about how to reach out, obviously parents and families probably are usually a first outreach for many. I know in signing my children up for programs, everybody always is, you know, right there on that sign up form. Would you be willing to volunteer and support? I also think that, you know, sometimes going to schools and finding people who maybe run sports programs during the course of the year, who might know the students, maybe they would like to spend part of their season also contributing and participating in the off season. Maybe they're willing to share their knowledge and some of their resources. So that can also be a good place to reach out. I've seen some great recruitment at school events for a lot of different programs, you know, whether it be like the initial school kickoff and maybe all the parents come for the education night at the school and the welcome activity, and then having a table at that event allows you to recruit volunteers for your season, your program, your sports league, where you can just get in front of the parents and invite more people to participate. Go to other local, you know, youth centers in your community. It could be a park district. It could be other sports programs that, again, you might be able to cross collaborate with some of the instructors. I've seen some great programs where high school, the athletes in a certain high school program will conduct or participate and support an off-season league that they can help develop younger players and share their knowledge and information. I've seen that from high school students and from college age students. And so sometimes, you know, colleges and high schools could be a great resource as well. If you have a local newspaper, oftentimes they'll put public service announcements at no cost. So reaching out to see if they will share your information can be really important. Social media is a great way to also expand your reach and continuing to let people know that you need more volunteers, and you can list out the different opportunities or maybe link to your website with those additional details that we talked about earlier. And maybe local businesses in your area. Again, they might be sports focused, they might offer similar programs, or they might just be local business owners who want to reinvest and show support in the communities that they serve. And so really being able to conduct some outreach there can be good. And then obviously park districts also have an awful lot of volunteers and programs that they might lean on, and there might be partnership opportunities there, or with your local municipality, your village, and programs of that nature might also support in a different way. Sometimes the municipalities may also have maybe a water bill that goes out to all of the residents. And so sometimes even being able to include, if they have a newsletter or an alderman has a newsletter that goes out, sometimes you can share your need for volunteers in their regular communication. So making sure you're thinking about those types of partnerships and opportunities is also very important and can be very helpful. I utilize this image on this slide because it really becomes like a web. Just the more people you can reach out to, the more organizations in your community you can collaborate with, lots of times the more support that you can find and develop for your program. And I think that you want to also, connect with those volunteers in your organization in a meaningful way. Invite those volunteers to also invite other friends and family to join them in volunteering. Maybe a brother, an uncle, a sister. They may have had a lot of sports experience and they might be a great fit for volunteering and supporting behind the scenes. And I think that part of your successful volunteer recruitment, again, comes around telling a story about why their help matters or how it's going to leverage the program that you're offering and what advantage there will be for the people participating in your program. So really making sure, again, that at all levels you're sharing that story and letting people know that they're going to have a meaningful impact, incredibly important. Communication details. Again, I think you've got to really be clear on who's going to manage communication for your league and how it's going to be managed. It might be a matter of, again, what pieces will the league administer? What pieces of communication are the coach's responsibility? What pieces come down into volunteer responsibilities, ongoing communication, ongoing outreach? And really just knowing, how that's going to happen is incredibly important. Again, I think communication is a key to success in managing a volunteer program. And people tend to forget, that volunteers don't know everything and we have to keep them in the loop. And oftentimes we may tell them something, but one time may not be enough. So making sure that you are reinforcing or refreshing or sending new information on a regular basis continues to be really important. Don't hesitate to repeat some of the information a couple of times to make sure that everybody's seeing it and receiving it. You have to decide on the frequency that's going to be relevant for your particular program. And depending on, if some of the frequency items are at the beginning of the season and then they're not needed. Some items around maybe your rain delays or rain program cancellation process, they may need to be reminded more frequently. So really just continuing to establish on the front end what you think your communication plan is going to look like. And then, at the end, we're going to talk a little bit about surveys and feedback. And I think collecting information about if the frequency was enough, kind of like the Goldilocks model. Is it too much? Is it not enough? Is it just right? So that you can tweak your program going forward is going to be really helpful for you. Again, knowing what method of communication you're using and being consistent. So I think it's important if you're going to have an app, I know a lot of sports programs do, making sure that you are very clear and concise, and that you don't deviate from what from that method of communication that you've told everyone you will be using. Because if you start to do something different, then people might not be looking for information in the right place. So really, telling people what method you're going to use and then sticking with it is very important to success in a volunteer program. Also, utilizing confirmations. Sometimes on email, you can request read receipts to make sure that the information was seen. You want to make sure that you are confirming with people. Maybe the first couple of messages, you want to also follow up and confirm they got it, because these days, some of the email programs are more sophisticated and more savvy, and they might take certain emails and move them into, a clutter folder, or label things and put them in a junk folder. So setting up priorities on the front end to make sure that you've been, whitelisted and approved by different firewalls or processes in individual email platforms, to make sure everyone's receiving your information is the first step in a successful communication plan. So taking the time to do that on the front end is important. And then regular updates and reminders. Again, you can't be just one and done. When you're working with volunteers, it's incredibly important to know that they're incredibly busy in their own lives. And so we do have to take the time to tell them things over and over. Oftentimes we will have committee meetings where we download, or training sessions where we are sharing a lot of information and walking through it and giving people that chance to ask questions. And then we send out a follow-up document that outlines the details again, so people have a point of reference. And I see this a lot with a lot of sports programs where you'll have the season rules, you'll have those documents that people then can refer to as the season goes on, and details around volunteer expectations are no different. Again, I've talked about communication preferences. It's important that, again, email, text. Some people, are more successful with one-on-one. If you have somebody in particular that you're not getting good response from, then I strongly encourage a one-on-one, and maybe that does require a direct call to that one person. I know that when you're managing a lot of volunteers, that's not something that you want to have to do frequently, because it can be very time demanding, and it just can be challenging on you. But on the flip side, if somebody's not getting your emails, if it doesn't seem you're off to a good start, you're not seeing responsiveness, then a direct outreach so that you can ask and try to get to the bottom of what the problem might be or why that's happening can be incredibly helpful in having you achieve a more successful season in the long run. Again, those group meetings, lots of times people like to come together. They like to be able to know who else is on the team, so to speak, and participating, and have a chance to ask their questions. And sometimes other people may have other preferences. So we tend to, by nature, think about what's most desirable to us and how we like to communicate. But when you're trying to manage volunteers successfully, you really want to think about them and try to meet them where they're at on the playing field, utilizing multiple means of communication and communicating frequently. Again, it's going to help you have the best season possible. As you receive applications in for your program, I want to just take a moment to encourage you to have a process in place to evaluate your candidates. I think that a lot of programs need a lot of volunteers, and you don't always have time to evaluate the applicants. But on the flip side, those programs that often take anybody who can, just has a heartbeat, can be disappointing, and it may not get you where you need to go. So trying to just be able to evaluate your candidates to know if they have experience in the area that they are looking to volunteer can be really helpful. And it can be helpful in how you pair up people. I'd like to encourage people to work on a succession plan where maybe you take an existing coach and put them with an assistant coach, somebody who's maybe it's the first year that their daughter or son is entering the league. Maybe it's the first year they've got this experience. So you put them with somebody who's been doing this for a few years so that they can start to learn from somebody who's been successful in the role. And it starts to help you make sure they're getting the ongoing training they need for the long run. And you're also starting to grow your volunteer pool so that when certain volunteers level up or, just start to fall out of your league, that then you've got a new pool of volunteers coming in the future. And so I always think there should be that model of trying to pair up volunteers so that somebody's always, kind of utilizing and teaching and training. And then when you have kind of what I like to call that co-pilot, then you also, if something happens to somebody, if there's an illness that unexpectedly, if somebody has to go out of town unexpectedly, it starts to not leave your organization with a void. It allows that assistant to be able to step in and fill the gap so that people participating in your program have a seamless transition and are unimpacted by those changes or absences. Then it comes to properly managing your volunteers. Again, I think one of the key elements of this is providing proper training, really making sure that you are setting your volunteers up for success on the front end just helps you in the long run to have a strong and stable program for the foreseeable future. It will carry over from year to year. It will allow you to easily make improvements from year to year. Again, I want to reiterate that as your volunteers come on board, one of the things you need to do is to share your goals and your vision for your league, for your team, really helping everybody understand and know where you're going. It helps foster buy-in and it helps people feel like they're connected to you. And everybody wants to help. We're a helpful species by nature. And so really when people know what you're trying to accomplish, it makes it easier for people to get involved and support you. So make sure you share your goals and vision. Again, sharing the rules and regulations and reiterating them. If you've included them in your volunteer recruitment process, once you manage your volunteers and onboard them, you want to share the expectations again. Repetition is going to be key to success. Establish a code of conduct and, clarify what will and will not be tolerated. I know a lot of sports programs do this, again, with the rules and regulations for play, but do it with your volunteers too. I think that I know from personal experience, we've seen those times where we've had to help volunteers be able to be protected. They are volunteers, for goodness sakes. And so we have seen some volunteers, be verbally abused. We've seen some unacceptable behaviors. We've seen people participating in programs just really lash out at volunteers in a way that cannot be tolerated. So I think that having a code of conduct and establishing, with everybody what is acceptable and unacceptable at all levels is important to protect your volunteers as well as your players, and really continue to develop leaders in the way we want people to, lead and participate in our programs in the long run. I think it's important that people realize you can have constructive input, constructive feedback, and be able to share, different points of view in a very positive way, but making sure that that's outlined and that process is clear. So you've got something to fall back on if you have a problem with any of your volunteers, and you can say, we already have this outlined before there's a problem. So you then have a way to handle the situation, swiftly and immediately, is incredibly valuable when you have the unfortunate situation arise like that. And then again, the ongoing communications. Continue checking in with your volunteers, continuing to give them refreshers or updates, and just maintain communication. I just had a call with somebody this morning that, she was talking about, even after I got somebody signed up, I think it's my responsibility after getting them involved to circle back and make sure that, I'm checking in about how their experience is progressing. And so I think when you want to have a strong volunteer program, you have to continue doing those check-ins. And just, I feel so strongly about it that I've created this additional slide about developing relationships with your volunteers. And so I think over time, you want to build up those relationships. You want the people who keep coming back year after year. Don't just think like, oh yeah, I know them, I know of them, but take time to really get to know them as a person. They may be able to contribute more. They may be able to invite more people into your program. And they might be part of that succession planning that we're talking about as well. As we move into the end of the season, I think one of the most important things is really also expressing gratitude to your volunteers. And again, we all want to feel like what we're doing matters. And so letting people know that you're grateful for them and that they did make a difference to you and your program and the people you serve, incredibly important. An end of season survey to your volunteers can be very useful. They see things you don't see when you are in the top level management of a program. And so conducting a survey to get feedback from those that are out in the field and have a direct connect with people participating in your program can be incredibly important. I know one program that I'm aware of, they were only at young ages, they were only doing all games. But, the young children, they couldn't focus enough. They weren't learning the basic skills of a program. And so really, they started to realize at that age, they needed to have one dedicated practice per week and one game. And that allowed them to then apply what they were learning in a different way and be more effective in developing the long-term skills that those youth needed. Ask for a renewal of commitment in the season. You don't have to wait until you're looking at next year to start recruiting for new volunteers. You can actually start this year and get those people who were really good or really made a difference and ask them if they'll commit to following up next year. And then you're already 2 steps ahead as you move into the next season. And then ask for volunteer ideas for additional volunteers. Are there pieces that people saw where additional volunteers were needed? Do they have ideas that could improve upon the volunteer program? And just really collecting that feedback again becomes important. I think posting stories and pictures of success is also incredibly valuable. If you take the participation of your coaches and those volunteers that you are grateful for, and you share them out publicly and tag them, it helps other people see, it helps other people start to be like, oh, hey, I might want to do that too. And then they may ask those people about, how do I get involved? And it's another way to not only show gratitude, but to help in your recruitment as well. Sharing public praise, again, maybe the local papers, maybe in your village newsletters, things of that nature can be very important. And share your success stories far and wide. If your league or your team had somebody who advanced to a high level, and it wouldn't be possible without the success of the volunteers, then just continue to be able to share that far and wide. And just help other people become aware of how amazing your program is, because people like to be involved with things that are going well, and that will help you continue to attract and recruit. As we move into our final phase for questions, I also just want to talk about your postseason management. It's important, again, that you try to stay connected. You may not have to stay connected in the same frequency that you did during the season, but on the flip side, in that relationship development, at least 1 or 2 check-ins during the off season can be very valuable in managing people and keeping them connected, so that when you go back to recruiting in the next, beginning of the season, then the outreach and the recruitment is going to be a whole lot easier, because you maintained your files, you maintained your contact information, and you stayed connected with those people, getting their feedback, involving them in planning, etc. Review the surveys for updates. It's not enough to just take the surveys, which I've seen a lot of organizations do, but you have to apply the knowledge that you've collected and gained throughout that period. If you've asked for volunteer recommendations on your surveys, the postseason is a great time to also reach out to those additional recommended volunteers. Start introducing yourself, start asking them to get involved before you need them in the next season. Again, share any updates. If you have updates from your league leadership and something's going to change, or there's an expectation of practices or special offerings of programs or trainings for the off season, make sure you're sharing those updates and just staying connected. Again, continuing to offer additional praise or gratitude. It may be as simple as a holiday message to wish them, nice holidays. And again, stress that the program wouldn't be what it is without their support, and continuing to do that. Maybe you want to have a social gathering. I've seen a lot of volunteer groups start to collect with one another and really start to lean on one another in a very positive way by having social interactions outside of their specific program. So it might be a good opportunity for you too. And then holding a planning session. It might be a wrap-up meeting, it might be a kickoff meeting, it might be both. But that is a great time to bring several of your key volunteers together and talk about what could go better and just brainstorm for how to improve the program for everyone involved. People like to feel more a part of that leadership, and by getting to have their voice heard in this way, they will start to feel more connected and continue to participate at that higher level that you seek. All right, well, I wish everyone continued success, and I hope that you continue to enjoy the sponsorship conference and have a great day.